management is hard, especially when working with, people, which is probably the people and things you're going to be managing. What a shit hook, eh? But we're just going to continue. Recently, one of my mentors and me were having a conversation about an experience I'd recently had. As part of my role in the ed tech that I work in, I'm a YouTube strategist and like producer. So I sort of manage and make sure that we're making good quality videos that reach the audiences that we want to reach so we can make the impact that we want to make. And recently, I was talking to a member of the team, and there was this like deliverable that was due that day, and they just sort of messaged me being like they're quite stressed out. They're probably gonna have to do OT, overtime, to be able to hand that deliverable in. And I could just tell that they were stressed, and I could tell they were emotionally just not in a great place. So rather than messaging them, I was like, hey man, let's hop on a Slack call, let's hop on a huddle, let's talk this out. And we talked, and I basically was like, hey man, absolutely no worries. We'll just push back the date when we're gonna be pushing out this video. And it's all good. Like, I don't want you to have to do OT and feel this sort of way. And I also sort of like made a bunch of other calculations to see if like it would be okay for that deliverable to be pushed back. But later on, when I was having that conversation with my mentor, I sort of walked into that conversation and was like, hey man, like this is what happened. We're pushing that back to the deliverable because it was causing too much like emotional stuff on this dude, as well as some of the other stuff. And one of the things my mentors told me is that while it's super, super important to empathize and actually understand someone else's emotion and like, be vigilant and aware about those things, don't let that influence your decision making purely from that standpoint. And that is because oftentimes, regardless of like how they feel emotionally, they still have a job to do that they're paid for. And also not just like, that may sound harsh, but the job that they have to do, the like accountability and responsibility of that job doesn't just lay on them. It lays on the entire business. It lays on the entire team. So if there's a deliverable that I'm not meeting, regardless of how I'm going through emotionally, the decision or not on whether I need to push through to make sure that deliverable actually goes through can't purely be made on how I feel and protecting my feelings and my like just me, because me not getting that deliverable can lead to all these other team members not feeling the best because they still have to share in the consequences of that deliverable not being met. So maybe this conversation was a little bit too technical, but the reason I'm telling you this is next time you're in a conversation, it doesn't have to be at work. It could be with your friend, could be with your parents, could be with your little brother. Take in the emotion of the feeling, like take in and really understand what this person is feeling. But at the same time, also like don't let that be the only thing that determines how you respond to that situation. Oftentimes, say like the actual right thing to do in those situations is to basically communicate something that you think this person who is going through it emotionally is going to have a hard time sort of accepting or dealing with it. Then it sort of becomes it sort of just comes down to your skill to be able to reframe whatever you want to say and give that advice constructively. So just because you don't want to like hurt their feelings should never be the reason that you don't actually communicate what you're supposed to communicate to them. And not that this was the case in my case. I had already considered all those other things. But the mistake that I made is I think when I communicated it to that team member to be like, hey man, it's okay, we're going to push this deliverable back, I think gave the message to that team member that the reason I was pushing the deliverable back was just because, he was emotionally like not able to do it and he would have to do OT and all these things. When in reality, the reason we were pushing that deliverable back had all these other reasons as well. Like I knew that it wasn't going to have big impacts on the business. I knew that ultimately it was actually like someone else's accountability and fault for why this team member was basically like received this thing too late to be able to get it in on time. So like there was all these other things that led to me making that decision to be like, hey man, it's all good. Don't worry about this. We're going to push it back. But next time I will communicate all those reasons to that team member so they don't feel as if the only variable that was actually considered was their emotions, because that sets the wrong precedent for the next time I have that conversation with them or with anyone else in the company. So like abstracting it back, if it's your little bro who is like crying to see if they can play a video game, you don't want to be like, hey man, you can go play a video game, because then they may think that, oh, I cried, I can play a video game. Where in reality, you want to communicate to them that, hey man, you can play a video game today because you did all this work and homework and did all the chores around the house, and it's a Friday night, you don't have school tomorrow. That's why you can play the video game, not just because you cried. So make sure you communicate all that context when you deal with people. I don't know if that was helpful. If it was, then it was helpful. Yeah.